There we go. So, hey everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. It's now 11 o'clock and I am here as your host today. My name is Sophia, for everyone who hasn't been in our webinars before, and I'm happy to see so many familiar faces and a lot of new names as well in this webinar today. As my support today, I have Lauren in the background. She's taking care of you in the chat. And my co-speakers today will be Birge and Paul, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you in a very short while. But before we start, as usual, in Zoom, you can today chat with us, and I recommend you do that. Interact with us a lot during the presentation from the guys. And you can also ask any kind of questions in the Q&A section. So I really encourage you to do that. And we have started now a webinar series about the Scrum Events, and we're really happy to have Birge and Paul kick off the session today with sprint planning. So we're going to learn a lot about that, and we're going to ask a lot of tricky questions to you guys. And at the same time, now that Birge and Paul will be introducing themselves, I thought that it would be nice to know also who is in the room with us. So who is our audience today? So we created a poll, and I'm going to share that with you now, so you can start putting in who you are and what role you have. And if you have multiple roles, you can click all of the roles. And if you have only one role, that's also very fine. And maybe, Paul, you can start off by telling us who you are, and then Birge, you go next.
Yeah, of course. Hi, thanks for joining. Really looking forward. My name is Paul, Agile coach at Agile 42. And yeah, living in Berlin, enjoying my life here and the bad weather. No, seriously, I cannot stand that anymore. And yeah, I've been working in Agile environments for the last 7 years in multiple roles, from Scrum Master, Lead Agile Coach, everything was there. And yeah, looking forward to chat with you afterwards and answer your questions.
Now I can introduce myself. Hi, I'm Birge. I'm also in Berlin, but I'm originally from Istanbul, Turkey. And I'm living in Berlin the last 5 years. Before that, I was in Istanbul, and I'm Agile coach for over 12 years, I guess. Like, I'm old. Anyhow. I worked also in many different Agile related positions like Scrum Master, Agile Coach, Lead Agile Coach, and right now I'm with happy member of an Agile 42 family. And yes, we are going to have a small chat today together with Paul about sprint planning. And yeah, we'll also be very much happy to answer your all questions. I think we are planning to have a chat around half an hour, and then the other half an hour will be dedicated to your questions.
That sounds absolutely correct, Birge. Before I let you go, I'm going to share the results with you guys so that you can see what the audience looks like. So we have a lot of Scrum Masters, product owners, and Agile coaches here. We have a few also from leadership and other people that have also other roles than the ones that we specifically asked for here. So it's a good match and mix of people here today, and I think there's going to be, looking at the participants, I think there will be good questions for you guys. So I'm also now going to be a little bit more in the background. If you need me, guys, just let me know, and I'll see you when we take the questions from the audience.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. And I think the poll is already showing very clearly. I mean, it makes totally sense from Scrum Master to join the session. I can totally understand. And for Agile coaches, product owners, I can assume that you have challenges there and want to learn more about that. So what is going to happen actually now is we have prepared one single slide for you. And Birge is going to tell us a bit about Scrum, about the sprint planning, from the Scrum Guide perspective. So I really liked going into the exact formulations of the Scrum Guide and understanding what the Bible is telling us. And afterwards, Birge and me are going to have a conversation around that. So it's a bit like a podcast, but with video. And then the next 30 minutes or the rest of the session, you're going to have time to answer your questions. So it's more going to be a conversation between Birge and me, and then your questions there.
Let's start rocking.
Yeah.
So I'm sharing our one famous slide in here. And in the meantime, I'm going to introduce you what is sprint planning. So of course, today is about sprint planning, and the rest of the webinar series will be dedicated to other events. But let's remember and refresh our knowledge about sprint planning. And like Paul mentioned, I'm going to be quoting from the Scrum Guide, the latest Scrum Guide, because it has also smaller changes in here. So we will all have the latest information. And yes, what is sprint planning? Sprint planning initiates the sprint. It's one of the very important events. And we are expecting at the end of sprint planning to have a plan to deliver value as an entire Scrum team. So, which means sprint planning takes place together with everyone, Scrum Master, product owner, and the team. The product owner ensures that everybody knows why we are doing this. So usually the product owner comes with a proposal of a sprint goal, and then the team discusses about how they can map their work to the sprint goal and thus product goal as well. And at the during the course of the sprint planning, we have three main questions to answer. The first one is why. In the first part, why we want to have this particular sprint goal. What do we want to create as a sprint goal? And then it is expecting to finalize the sprint goal before the sprint planning, all together with the contribution of the engineers as well, or the developers, or the rest of the Scrum team. And then when the sprint goal is clear, then the team starts to talk about the necessary product backlog items needs to be included to the sprint to contribute to the sprint goal. So Scrum team over there discusses about, okay, this can go in, this can go out, this is important. And they also talk about their capacity based on their prior performance. Like, okay, we are going to be that many in that sprint, and we have that capacity, upcoming holidays or not. We did like this last time, and we can take this much. And when they selected the appropriate product backlog items or the stories or the epics, whatever they have in their backlog, then they can continue with the third important question, which is how. How we can deliver those product backlog items. And it's also includes like, subtasking the items, how they are going to do this. And it's totally dedicated to the engineers or the developers. And at the end of the sprint planning, the hands must be shaken for proper set of items, defined how they are going to be delivered, and everybody knows why it is going to be delivered. And the sprint planning, according to the Scrum Guide, is maximum of 8 hours for 1 month sprint. So for shorter sprints, of course, it's shorter. And this is sprint planning in nutshell. So cool. I will keep this awesome presentation all the time with us, so we can refer here and there some parts.
Yeah, cool, Birge, thanks. Actually, I can recommend everyone from time to time to look into the Scrum Guide again. I mean, everyone has been there, but I also find myself that it should be valuable that I look again into it, because the formulations are so sharp. You can notice, like, by every word they have spent so much effort and consideration into that. just have a look into it again. And I think it really helps you understanding what they want to say with it. It's always a good journey to look back into the Scrum Guide, especially now with a new release that has been made there 1 year ago.
Yeah, even like I was preparing this awesome slide and preparing myself, I had like, some epiphanies and aha moments because we read it again through and through, like, literally word by word, and it just like, light something up in me. Maybe I can also ask the audience to start our conversation about sprint goals. Fia, can you help us and shoot the question to our audience? Do you have sprint goals? How many sprint goals do you have? Are you working with sprint goals? And while you are answering this question, maybe I can ask Paul why we are starting with always sprint goal, why it is that important.
Yeah, the sprint goals are really a powerful thingy. They have been there in Scrum Guide all the time, but they have got a way more present and prominent place in there now. So they've even been made one of the 3 parts of a product backlog, sprint backlog, sorry. So I see the big power of sprint goals actually in there, that it forces the team to focus. I mean, writing one goal that a bunch of people is willing and committing to achieve sometimes is so challenging. I mean, normally you have within a developer team, you have people working on several components, and they are normally they are working on this component. This is their most favorite one, or they're most strong here and most strong there. So many teams are actually filling their product backlog with items that are fitting those several components, so that people can work independently from each other. And now writing one sprint goal in order to have all of this combined, this is really not easy, but it actually often shows, are there even silos in there? So if one person is always focusing on this area, how can you combine that to one goal? And what is actually really the achievement that you want to have? And making it one goal that's I think the very tough thingy. So it enforces a lot of transparency by that. And the transparency sometimes feels tough, like we cannot do that. One goal is not easy for us, so it's not possible. But literally this transparency is showing that actually the team is spreading on very many projects or components or multiple things at the same time. So I think it's a tool to show the importance. Why is the sprint relevant? And secondly, to create a lot of focus. And it makes it tough by that.
Yeah, by the way, when I check the results, I see that almost half of our participants are working with multiple sprint goals. So as you mentioned, it's tough, but it also shows, like you say, different things. Like it means that the team needs to focus on multiple items at the same time, or maybe the team's structure is not serving for the purpose of end-to-end delivery, like working together to create one significant value contributing to the product goal. So Scrum is very good in that way. Like Scrum is not the solution for everything, but it surfaces the problems or the issues or the challenges, not only related with the team, but even with the company. So when we continue the sprint goals and how to create good sprint goals, it's, for example, also pretty much related with the product goal, the company strategy, for example. And if you have OKRs, it's also very much aligned and parallel, and you can drive very good sprint goals out of the quarterly OKRs, for example.
I think this is a really nice opening always for sprint planning. If the product owner comes in and says, hey, we are standing right now here, and I mean, let's look in our team OKRs for this quarter. I think this we should focus on more. It comes up with a proposal, and then the team can actually define together what the sprint goal is going to be. And often I see it actually reverse engineered, that the teams are first pulling the backlog items that are ready for the sprint, and then afterwards they put their sprint goal on top of that. So we have now this bunch of product backlog items. How can we cluster that to one or several sprint goals? So this is reverse engineered, and I think not in the idea of the inventor. So start with the goal and the why, and then select the items accordingly to that. Because if the product backlog items are not fitting towards the sprint goal, why to spend time on that now?
And it reminds me one more thing, like there is also a question mark or expectation from product owner to like finalize the sprint goal. No, usually product owner brings a proposal. Okay, this is what we want to achieve, and this could be a meaningful part of it. And then the team also contributes. It's not one man's show or one man's job or one woman's job, but it's a collaboration. It needs to create it all together and shook hands, like, let's shake hands. Okay, this is the one that we are committing. I think commitment is also a good word over there. Like, if you have the proper understanding, if you have the proper confidence, then you can commit.
And I like what you've just touched the topic, Birge, about like the role of the product owner. Is it really to say, hey guys, let's do this? Bam, 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 this is the order list. Whereof it's way more nicer to come with a proposal, initiative, and then the whole team's responsible actually to build the sprint backlog out of that. So here actually the approach of collaboration and using the wisdom of the whole team in order to create the most meaningful direction for the next sprint. I've seen those anti-patterns that you just slightly mentioned there before.
Yeah, it's also pretty much related with the refinement. And this, like, ready item list is kind of correlated with how not useful maybe, but how efficient your refinements are. And to be honest, I see a great relation with the flow that we have in here is actually starting from refinement, because they are kind of complementary to each other. But I have a brain teaser question for you. I'm going to jump a bit from the what part, but in here we see three parts, like, why, what, and how. And we have also refinements. Why we need refinements if we have already the how part in here?
Maybe I can catch up that one. So what's the difference actually, refinement and the how? So refinement is focusing obviously on the problem. The user problem defines in there, you write your user story, the acceptance criteria, and this is more about which problem do we have to solve and which acceptance criteria do we need in order to satisfy this user need. And the how is then actually there in order to think which steps do we have to do in order to satisfy the user's needs. So like, do we have to branch a database? Do we need to still do UX design? How do we merge it, etc.? Like really the to do to deliver it. And the correlation is there. If you don't talk about the how at the end, you tend to do that already earlier. So this is a big risk that teams tend to jump in, that they already talk during the refinement about how can we deliver that, but it's not time yet to do that.
As you mentioned before, like, we have a nice order in here, why, what, and how. And if you do like this, you are basically breaking the whole order.
So if, I mean, you're refining your backlog items prior to the sprint is starting. And then if you already talk very much in detail about how you want to deliver that, and at the end, this item doesn't get pulled into the sprint. So you've already spent a lot of effort about very granular planning without the need, yeah, because there's potential of risk that you're taking in to define too much upfront, and just do that once you've decided, yes, we will definitely pull that in. So the how we will solve it is obviously always top of mind for the people who are delivering, the development team, but it should be talked rather at the end, because it consumes a lot of energy, and if you potentially waste that, it's a pity.
Yeah. By the way, again, if we check the Scrum guide, the last sentence is about the sprint backlog. Sprint planning is sprint goal, the product backlog item selected for the sprint, comma, plus the plan for delivering them are together referred as the sprint backlog. So this is actually the outcome of the sprint planning, and how is basically defined in here as well.
And I've many teams that are struggling with sprint planning about what should we pull in, and the conversation is going all over. Often it's an indicator for making poor refinement, or spending too little time to refinement, too little investment. So if you do great and intensive refinement, normally the second part, selecting the items that are supposed to be in there, is a super fast thing. Like I'm talking about 10 minutes, yeah? Because you have your prioritized list of backlog items, well refined, sized, and everyone knows what's supposed to, what the user problem is there. And then you can just say, okay, we have, based on the last weeks, we have normally delivered 20 user story points. So let's calculate down 20 user story points. Okay, at the 5th item, we have to cut it. That's it. So it's really really fast forward if the refinement has been made appropriately.
And I also want to emphasize that it's also some sort of anti-pattern that I see, not only for sprint planning, but for Scrum in general. There is so less time dedicated to understand the actual problem. There is so less time dedicated to see the actual root cause. And then I think it's the human brain is wired to jump to the solution space, but I see this like that, in the refinement, as you exactly said, you look to the problem zone. And then in the sprint planning, you define the how part. Then you can continue with the solution area.
And Birge, I know it's for many teams it's a big question, how to figure out the right amount of stories to pull into a sprint.
I think it, like I said, depends on the previous sprints, what you have done. But let's say if the team is new and they're just starting, my only answer will be experimenting, because Scrum is also in the unknowns area. It's a complex domain and there are so many unknowns. And the only way that you can reduce the unknowns is go through based on what you have already know. And if your team is mature enough, working for a long time, the product is more or less stable, you know what you need to deliver, then it's easier to predict. But if it's new, the best thing that you can do is trying, trying how much can we fit. Do we have reduced the unknowns enough or not? And retrospectives is a great way to do this. And the second thing, it's more or less a tip, is not trying to utilize everyone 100%, because it's not about all the product backlog items needs to be have your 100% of the time and capacity. Again, why? Because of the unknowns. There might be always surprises. And if you don't have any area or flexibility to experiment, to try out, and come up with a better solution for the problem that you already know, thanks to the refinements, then it will be very hard. But what are your ways, let's say?
Well, I have made good experience as a Scrum Master, helping the team to pull the right amount of stories using some metrics. So you can look into the past and collect with them together the metrics. For example, how many user story points have been delivered per sprint, and that matching them together with the capacity that they have. So the capacity, you can ask in the beginning of a sprint, within sprint planning, hey, how many days are you available this sprint? And just sum that up, write it down. I've built stupid Excel sheets for that, because even the tools we had, Jira and stuff, was not good enough for that. So just collect the amount of story points you've delivered over the last sprints, and then average that. Calculate about the average. It's not important about the individual sprints. It's not for performance measurement. It's more about learning how much more or less you can do. Yeah, then the capacity you have according within the sprint. And the third one could be then how much story points did you committed to? So you also understand, do we always overcommit or undercommit? And if you actually have this gap about committed stories and delivered ones become less over the time, then you actually become more accurate, and you can see like, this line is slowly going down, and we become more accurate about what we've committed to what we deliver. So this is a nice chart going down as well.
Okay, sorry for that. My father missed me. Yeah, while we are talking about this, maybe it will be good also touch to leftovers. How are we going to plan the spillovers or leftovers or undone stories coming from the previous sprint?
Yeah, also common pattern. So short answer is no re-estimation. At the end of the sprint, look into that, which work is not completely done not done according to the definition of done, and then pull it back into your product backlog, just as it is. And in the sprint planning, then reconsider, should we continue work on that, or did the priority change? And then you take the half done work, or whatever, how far you got it, take it back into the new one. I wouldn't recommend, like, there has this thing about re-estimating. I wouldn't do that. It's a consuming effort, and you don't need it, because if you look back into the metrics that I've just told you, the average is important. It doesn't matter. So it could be that then you have in one sprint, let's say 4 user story points delivered, and the other one 20, because you have had, like, I don't know, half of the stories had been already half made, so you delivered so many story points in one sprint. But then the average is important. This is actually what you want to look at, not the individual ones. It's more about the mass of data that you have, the quantity.
I also see, like, talking about the reasons why about the spillovers is important, and also maybe tracking, like, how many spillovers you have, like, is it always, is it once in a while, is it always too much, is it always just a bit, and try to understand the reasons. It's maybe related with how we estimate, how we plan, but there might be other reasons, and it's always very, like, valuable to look at the reasons. And maybe we need to, like, also join the retrospective series, like, upcoming webinars.
I like what you really said, because this could be a fourth metrics, amount of spillovers or quantity of spillovers. And this is also reducing over time. That would be the goal. Really nice one. I didn't think about that. Yeah. Maybe to wrap up a bit, what are your typical pitfalls or challenges that you see that people have with sprint planning, Birge?
I think throughout our discussions, we have, like, touched some of them. It will be good to summarize. Multiple sprint goals, dedicating 100% of the capacity, Maybe something that we haven't talked, but not including the team to any part of the planning, because this is also something that I have seen and heard of it. Everything regards the planning is done by the product owner, and it's just given to the engineers. Okay, now implement this. I think it's very, very, very wrong. Another thing that you have mentioned is not having the proper order, not starting with why and continuing with what. But as you said, selecting some PBIs and try to derive the why out of it, or not trying before not understanding the problem, jumping to the solution area could be one.
Rushing very quickly,
Yeah,
not taking time for it. So I've seen sprint plannings be like so quick, like 20 minutes done, but in the end the sprint blows up. Yeah, so maybe that over rushing.
and maybe as the last one, I can say not being data driven. As you mentioned, there are metrics, there are stuff that you can check, not for reporting, but for understanding the team, understanding the dynamics. And yeah, I think those can be the common pitfalls that I can write, but how we can avoid them, how we can have the perfect sprint planning. And this could be our last question to each other, so we can have a little bit more questions from the audience, because I see red bubbles there.
Yeah, the path to the perfect planning takes obviously a bit of time and practice. Yeah. So when I, as a Scrum Master, start with new teams, normally they already do something. Yeah. So I start very passive, start observing 1 or 2 sprints, and at some point then I start asking them, hey, how is your sprint planning doing? At the end, yeah, at the end of the meeting, ask them, hey, how happy are you with your sprint planning? Maybe you vote from 0 to 5 with your fist, like schnick, schnack, schnuck, very fast. This is worse and 5 is best, and then in between, yeah. And then you ask them, what else do you want to do? What can you improve? And they're going to tell you already 1, 2, 3 items that they want to do, and help them executing that, help them to realize it in the next ones. And then after some time, you've gained trust. I start asking them, hey, can I also share some feedback and mirror them what I've seen and what I observe? And obviously I match that obviously with my perfect work then. And then slowly squeezing and pushing into a direction. And sprint planning, I mean, this is a repetitive meeting. It can have really very standardized agenda. And it depends a bit on the team situation and what kind of tools they're using. If they use OKRs, for example, they check OKRs at the beginning. If they don't, or have another roadmap thingy or tool there, they look more into that. So you can actually write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points that you always go through, and that those points you can adjust over time and improve the continuous agenda that you're having in there. At some point, Scrum Master is not needed anymore in sprint planning. It's really routine. Like the more often you do it, the more easy it will be, like the daily. After some time, there's no facilitator needed anymore. So yeah, making this list transparent for the team, and that they know what is our internal rhythm to go to do the sprint planning, sorry.
Thank you. Then maybe I can stop sharing so we can see each other better, and then take some questions from the audience.
That sounds about right. Thanks, Paul and Birge, so far for the presentation and telling us a little bit more about the sprint planning. Also, guys, now is the time to ask tips and tricks and whatnot from the guys here in the live webinar today. So type your questions, and we already have a lot, so I hope we can at least answer a few of them now in the remaining time. Let me just pick one and we start from there, right? And you can choose, Paul and Birge, who wants to answer if you don't want to do it, both of you. But how do you have, for example, any tips on supporting teams into getting towards one goal? Here is an example that there is a a team with multiple goals and the team can't have just one goal. So how can we support this?
Yeah, Bill?
Yeah, you can go. Yeah.
I mean, this is a common thing, as we have mentioned, yeah. So it's, I think, more the question about what's the reason it's not possible to have one goal. So digging into that, yeah. So if it's really not possible, you will not just by saying, okay, we need one, you're able to. It will not come out of that, or it's artificial and it's not counting or valuable then for you. It's rather look into the reasons why are we actually spread, or what is actually the context that we're in. So figuring that out and working on this kind of root causes. As I've mentioned, maybe there are several components, people are working on that, or maybe they cannot work on one component at the same time due to technical challenges. Yeah, so they are not able to merge all with multiple people into the master branch, whatever. That could be reasons, and try to fix that, because normally it indicates you to a problem that it's worth to investigate and fix it. Doesn't mean that you will do it very, very quickly, but it shows you or indicates your problem.
Yeah, I also agree with that. And it might be because of multiple things. It might be related with the team structure. Like maybe the team or the organization should be different. It should be serving why they need to have multiple goals, as Paul said. If the team structure can serve for end-to-end delivery of something, why they cannot work on one thing? This is something that you can ask. Another thing is maybe Scrum is not for you. Maybe it should be a Kanban. It's also a possibility, but I just want to emphasize this as well, like, with very bold lines. If Scrum is not working for you, if you don't have the right reasons to switch to Kanban, don't see Kanban as a solution for you. It's very important, because sometimes the nature of the work is not suitable for Scrum, but it's more suitable for Kanban. You don't you shouldn't mix those two. It's very important. And it's like Paul said, there might be other stuff. Maybe the architecture you have is not serving for this one goal topic, but it's important to put more time and thinking on, like, why, rather than, again, if you don't spend enough time in the problem zone, and if you just jump to the solution zone, it's most probably will not be sustainable and long term.
Thank you. Let's take another question regarding the goals. Here is a person interested in some real example of real life goals. Can you give something that's not very generic, but something that you maybe saw with your teams or when you coached teams?
Maybe I can go.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in one of my teams, the team is working. It will be very hard to not be not very generic, but also like detailed. They are working as a company about a data topic. And this particular team is working on displaying the data. And their one of their OKRs is making this data more structured and more easy to consume, etc., etc. And usually every time how they are creating the sprint goal is based on that. They have an initiative, they have a plan. By the way, they are also working with the OKRs. They have a plan. And usually how they are doing is they have their problem, and they have their refinement sessions, and out of the refinement sessions, they creating their items over there. And every time they are trying to solve one thing. Like one of them could be a technical, very technical topic. The other one is more customer-based topic, but every time when they are trying to come up with the sprint goal, usually the product owner is bringing one part of the problem. It's not the whole thing. And this is how they are trying to do. I'm sorry, I'm not very specific, but I hope it will help to visualize how they create this goal. Paul, do you have any other example?
No, let's go to the next question.
Yeah.
Thank you. So let's take this one. When the items on the top of the backlog, the high priority items, are about different topics, how can a single good sprint goal be formulated?
So I've seen a similar question in there, and I would like to actually read that out. What if the sprint goal does not align with the backlog items that are ready and refined? Yeah, so this is a very sprint similar. So this is actually nice. So I think you first have the conversation, what is really important for the team to get done? So the goal, and then you look into your backlog. Oh, my backlog items are not fitting to that. So what to do? I think it would be better to adjust your product backlog items that they can fit towards the goal and not the other way around, adjust the goal. So I would say then use the time, and this will maybe take a bit longer, and think about what do we really need to do in order to achieve the sprint goal. If you really figured out this is what we should do, and be happy about that, although it will needs rework, but I would really be happy about that because it's shown you that if you would have just done the backlog items, it wouldn't help you with the outcome.
And it's also worth to, like, look why you have those items on top and who put it there.
Yeah.
Cool. So what about this one then? If you're working with a team that's not a traditional Scrum team with single products, but rather different streams, each with their own products to deliver on program, how do you bring together multiple sprint goals?
Why would that be needed? That's my question. Why to put multiple sprint goals? So first of all, if you have a Scrum team with multiple products, it's not really a Scrum team as by definition. Though I understand that this happens and the reality is showing is having that. But I mean, if there are multiple products, you cannot put one sprint goal for multiple products. I think this is wouldn't make sense. So I think here, if you have the situation, and yeah, I emphasize one team per product. I think this is the most comfortable situation. If not, it's have the goals per product.
I agree, and it's also one of the things that makes a team is a united purpose. So if your team is working, like, different team members working on the different products, what will create a unity among them? What will create a togetherness? What will create the, I don't know, soul of a team? It's working group is different than a team. I think it also needs to be little bit of investigated over there. Is it a working group or is it a team?
Thank you. Here is a question regarding the leftovers that you spoke about earlier. How can you avoid falling into a cycle of having sprints made up of the undone things from previous sprints and not having enough time in the new sprint to avoid that happening again?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, there's a lot behind. So reasons why teams have those spillovers, leftovers, not finished sprints are super wide. Yeah, often it's overcommitting, just pulling more in and not understanding well enough what the work that you have chosen is exactly. So you don't understand exactly what you have to do there. So using metrics to first see the situation. Yeah, hey, we've always pulled more than we actually can deliver. That's one thing. Using the metrics for that. That's another thing. And looking into the reasons why is that happening. Maybe it's also architectural wise, and the whole merge requests and bringing code into the master is painful. It doesn't. It works. It takes too long. Maybe it's a collaboration with the testing people. So I think this is an indicator to dig deeper into, and the reasons, they depend. It's very much on the team situation.
I also see one more side. It may be also related with the trust and the pressure on the team, like, why they feel like they need to take more. This is also something that you can also check in a more meta level, like, what is happening with the team and why they have this urge to deliver more, like, where is this coming from?
Yeah, good point.
Thank you. Next question, what could be a proper way to react when the plan goes sideways?
Sideways, what could that
According
mean?
to the Scrum Guide, I'm again going to quote the Scrum Guide, the sprint can be only, like, canceled by the product owner. So if there is a radical change, if there is a radical miscalculation, if there is a radical problem there, it's product owner's authority to cancel the sprint and replan or change things in advance. But other than that, Scrum and most of the time, most of the other agile frameworks are giving us the flexibility, like, it's giving us the resilience. If the things goes wrong, like, then we can plan. That's why we are having smaller parts of the problem. That's why we are working in 2 weeks time box cycles. And if you consider 2 weeks in a, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years of a product development life cycle in general, it's almost nothing.
And I mean, the plan, I mean, the sprint, when you figure out in the middle of the sprint, are we not going to make it? Don't stop the sprint or prolong the sprint or anything. Keep the cycle time. And at the end, ask yourself in the retrospective, what could we have made different? Yeah, this is why we want to always have the same intervals and then inspect and adapt. Hope that helps.
Thanks. Here's a person who is a quite new Scrum Master to a team, and the team consists of 4 devs. And she's describing this situation as there seems to be a habit of the product owner pushing 2 stories into a sprint, and then the devs split into 2 sub-teams. Is there a tip or trick on how to deal with this?
I'm not sure if I got the problem in that. We have 4 teams.
Yeah, I'm also trying to find the question over there. Yes, this one. Okay, I have a very, like, rough advice over there. Like, as a Scrum Master, it's technically your duty to prevent the product owner is pushing the stories. Like, you need to be the guardian for that one. And the devs split into 2 sub-teams. Is it related with the topic? And do you have the knowledge silos? And that's why they are working all the time together? Or there are, like, always different pairs? Then it's also another thing, because engineers or developers working in pairs is not a bad thing per se, like, if they are, like, always mix and matching. But the question is why product owner is bringing those topics in the middle of the sprint, why they are new, why they are not discussed before. And if there are, like, some operational / maintenance work, or is it serving for the product goal and the sprint goal purpose? Like, what is happening there? I think the best thing that you can do is bring these topics to the retrospective and discuss all together. Look to the details of the stories, look to the details of the, what is going on, what are the dynamics, and try to prevent knowledge silos if there are any.
And I'm still not sure what the problem in this question is being described. Just if the habit is that there are always two stories and that's it, and then the team splits into two subtype teams, which is okay. They are kind of grouping on those stories. But if it's always the same if it's always the same amount, why is it always two stories? I mean, normally there are different sizes. Yeah. So challenge that, like, why always two? And is that already focused on, I look a story for maybe front and back end, this is a common pattern, or for those specific people and those specific people, rather than looking on the most valuable items. So don't look for making people busy rather than select the items from priority.
Thanks. I just also want at this point remind everyone in the audience who are asking questions, when we answer them, if there's something you would still like to have a discussion around, you're very freely advised also to contact our office. I will ask Lauren to put our international office email in the chat for you guys. So if you have any questions that you would like to discuss with one of our coaches, just get in touch as well, and we can book a conversation for you regarding that. I'm picking another question, guys. So what if the engineers don't agree that the goal is top priority? For example, technical debt or a refactor might be more beneficial. How do you handle that kind of a situation?
Be happy about it. I think that's good. I mean, yeah, but Birge, I think you have similar. So go ahead.
Yeah, basically, I think there are two questions over there. One of them is a little bit more obvious and the other one is more secret. One question is, if the engineers are not agreeing with the sprint goal, this is one thing. And the second part is, what are we gonna do with the technical parts, technical depth, like, technical stories? And I have two answers from my side. And the first answer for the first question, that's sprint goal is always open to debate. If the team and product owner can come up together with a common solution, then it's good. Because like I say in the beginning, what product owner brings is the why, and explain why he or she thinks this particular sub part of the problem is contributing for the overall value that the team needs to create. So it's open for debate. It can be discussable, but at the end, the whole team needs to shake hands. This is the first thing. The second thing is from my side, there is a misconception of that technical debt is not creating a value, business value, but it's also up to the team to bring this in the right time. Not all the technical debt needs to be solved, but the thing is, it needs to be planned together with product owner, and it needs to be also discussed whether they can go hand by hand with the proper product backlog items. Can we do this at the same time doing this? Again, when I read about the sprint backlog, it says product sprint goal plus all the other things that the team needs to deliver together with the sprint goal, so it can reach to the customer or client as a product increment, as a value, as an outcome. So this is the important part, and I'm throwing the ball to Paul.
Adding on that, because you mentioned something really, really interesting, technical debt shouldn't be delivered isolated from business value. So never go into a refactoring phase of 3 or 4 months or whole sprints. Combine that with the business value that you're delivering. So, for example, we are going to deliver user story. We're touching this area of the whole system. At the meanwhile, then we are taking one of our technical debt stories and combine it with that. So because we're touching that area of the system anyway already, let's refactor or improve it. So combine that together.
Yeah, technical debt, like I said, can be also prioritized, can be matched with the product backlog items, and you can have also a technical strategy over there. It shouldn't be separate, and it shouldn't be like very apart from each other. I think either we can have a teeny question, or we can start to say goodbye. I don't know.
We can take one more question as the last question, and then we can wrap up the session for today. I'm picking this question now. So what if the Scrum team doesn't have a dedicated product owner, rather like two people in different time zones saying different things, and then the management comes and overrules everything and the plans completely change? What do you do in a situation like that?
So sorry. No, I mean, it's so the situation is multiple product owners and then the manager is overruling at the end, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or no dedicated product owner at all, but two people just saying different things in different time zones. So you get confused.
I think it's a problem rather with the organization and culture, and it's not directly related with Scrum or the team. Like, you know, this issue needs to be addressed in different levels with different measures, let's say, but it's not directly related with Scrum. Like I said, somewhere in the middle, Scrum just surfaces other connected topics.
So if you have that actually popping up because you cannot do proper sprint planning, and then you notice like really in a really grateful way, we don't have a product owner. Yeah, I think this needs to be addressed. So talking with those people involved, can maybe someone of you be the product owner? So take the decision, who of you is it going to be? Who is going to be the communication person towards the team, that they don't have a committee of people and they don't have to look for the information. They get it from one person, and that person is empowered to take decisions. This is really figuring that out with those managers and multiple product owners. And if a team doesn't have a product owner at all, so they have to do that themselves, maybe either one person within the team can take over this accountability. Yeah, I think that would be probably the best way.
Okay.
Let's wrap up. And before we finish, I want to share my screen one more time to remind our audience and participants about the Agile 42's online courses. We have a great module over there about facilitating Scrum, and you can just click and go and learn. And we have also other topics over there. While you are in the agile42.com/en/e-learning, you can also take a look to our other courses for Agile coaching, for Kanban, for conflict management. We have lots of other topics there.
Absolutely. We warmly recommend you this one, and we also recommend you to stay tuned via social media, for example, or signing up to our newsletter so that you will get invitations to the next upcoming webinars in the same series about the other Scrum events. So we really want to thank you all for being here, and thanks for all the good questions. It was really nice to see a lot of familiar names, but also new names. The recording will be out in a few days, so you can also find that on our website. You can share it around with people that missed the live sessions, or if you know someone who could benefit from listening to this topic from Paul and Birge. And I also want to thank you, Paul and Birge, for being here today with me. It was really nice. Good discussion around sprint planning. So I hope that also the audience had some tips and tricks that they can now take away with them. And if you have more questions, feel free to get in touch with us, and we're happy to connect you with the coaches.
Thanks for
joining. Thank you. And thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. See you around.
Bye.